Welcome to Mobile Armor Radio, the podcast for all things mecha.
And welcome to a special episode of Mobile Armor Radio. This is going to be 27.5, I think that's where we're at. I never remember what number we're on. And I'm Rob, and I got Pat with me.
How you doing?
And we have a special guest. We have Bryan Young on tonight.
Well, thanks for having me.
And you're right up our alley because you're not only in one foot's in Robotech, but you also got a foot in Battletech. So you're all about what we talk about. So we're excited to be talking to you tonight.
I'm excited to talk about these things. I really love Robotech and Battletech, and the only thing I'm more excited about than talking about it is writing it. So
cool. Yep. So you were involved with the Robotech RPG, the newest one coming out, and you've also recently wrote a book for Battletech, Honor's Gauntlet, which is a great book. And So how'd you get involved with both of those things right off the bat?
Getting involved with both of them, it really had to do with just my writing. I've been doing a lot of writing and playing in a lot of sandboxes. I write about Star Wars a lot, actually. So like for the Sci-Fi Channel and for Slash Film and for StarWars.com and Star Wars Insider. And so I kind of had a track record with sci-fi. And I was doing a lot of conventions, actually, as a writer with that stuff, but also with my own writing. I'd put out 4 novels and a nonfiction book, and just kind of met the right people. And Robotech, well, that's not necessarily... Battletech sort of happened first, but then Robotech actually came out first. Battletech, I was doing conventions with John Helfers, the editor, the fiction editor for Battletech and Shadowrun, and I had approached him a few years ago and said, hey, I really love Shadowrun. Can I write some Shadowrun? And he said, I'm really in need of Battletech writers. Would you be interested in diving into that universe instead? And my exposure to Battletech to that point had just been like, when I was a kid, I played the SNES MechWarrior game, like, to death. In fact, as soon as he said, yeah, can you come back? That was the first thing I did. I pulled that game back out and my old Super Nintendo and played the hell out of it all over again. And I'd done some other stuff too, and I ended up playing some of the tabletop and reading a ton of the books to get sort of into the universe. And I'm friends with Mike Stackpole, and he kind of nudged me toward it and helped guide me through which books I needed to read to catch up really quickly. And
Mike Stackpole, huh?
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, if anybody's going to know about what to read, it would be him, I guess.
Well, and mainly he was like, my books are probably the ones you need to read.
Makes sense.
So while I was doing that with Battletech, I got a call from a friend who knew I was super into Robotech and said, hey, this new company grabbed the license for Robotech board games, and they wanted to know if they'd be able to talk to you and take a look at the game. And so this was their Attack the SDF-1 game. Mm-hmm. And
we're well aware of that one. Pat and I have played that a few times.
Yeah, so the guys behind that had done that, and so I'd built a relationship with them, kind of helping them out with some Robotech stuff. And when the RPG license came up, they came to me and said, hey, we know you're a writer, we know you're into this stuff. Do you think you'd be able to write a whole bunch of fiction for the universe, like the scenarios and character bios and handle all that kind of stuff for the RPG so we can focus on all the mechanics? And that is what I did. So I spent a long time reading Battletech, in the mornings and then watching Robotech in the evenings. And
such a hard life, right?
Yeah, I know, right? Well, and I was working on some Star Wars stuff too that I can't quite talk about, but it was like Star Wars, Robotech, and Battletech. I was doing some stuff professionally for all 3 at once, and I was like, I need to pinch like 15-year-old me. But so I got the Robotech book out and done, and then with Battletech, I pitched a whole bunch of books, and they were like, oh, we like this one, and we're going to move forward on that. And then just as we were going to move forward, they were like, no, we're doing something else. So this was the coming of the Ill Clan era. Mm-hmm. So everything that we'd been working on kind of got put on hold until they had this big story summit, and they kind of changed the landscape of what's going to happen in the future of Battletech. And I wasn't able to be there, but Mike Stackpole was. So Mike Stackpole made sure that I got a few different spots on the schedule, and the first one was Honor's Gauntlet. So nice. It was I had no intention. There was no intention in my schedule of writing anything clan-based. I was working in some other areas of the universe, and so I had to really quickly get up to snuff on all the clan stuff outside of the Kerensky stuff that Mike had written, which was my biggest exposure to clans. So, and then all of my exposure to clans was in the Wolves, because that's what Mike likes. And I had to get up to speed on the Jade Falcons to write the book, and so Robotech came out. Well, actually, so it was like I turned in my first draft of the book in November last year, and Robotech came out in December of last year, and then through all the revisions and fact check, Honor's Gauntlet was finally able to come out last month. So they take that stuff seriously.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, because I'm sure if there was any little thing wrong, there would be somebody complaining about it.
Yeah, no, I can totally see that, and I think that's one of the challenges of Battletech in general, is that when you step in, it's like, okay, you've got literally, 1,000+ years of alternate history to learn. Yeah, it's like getting dropped into an alien world and saying, okay, here's 1,000 years of history, and it starts in our past with the with the technology to travel to other planets, and then it slowly spins out from there, and then you've got all the different eras, and it's a lot to wrap your head around, and to try to make it, I hope Honor's Gauntlet, I really tried to make it so that a new reader could come in and go like, oh, I can get all of what's going on here with the context and include enough of that. And there were some books that I'd read for Battletech where it was like, I don't think they did. I told Mike this actually, for sure. So the first books Mike told me to read were The Blood of Kerensky, like that whole heritage arc and stuff. And I started reading it, and I'm like, none of this makes any sense. Yeah, because you don't have the backstory for it. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I went back and started with like the Bill Keith stuff with the Grey Death Legion, and started there. That was a really great introduction into the universe, and so as I was taking notes and reading Battletech books in all of my research, it was really, how can I make this accessible to people who either have never read a Battletech book or have fallen out of the fiction for a long time and want to get back in and know kind of what's going on. Yeah, and the beauty of that book, it takes place in 3150, I believe, so it's like 100 years after the heyday of Battletech, say in the original clan invasion. So it's past all the jihad, past like the end of the Dark Ages pretty much, so you're almost in a new era right there, so it's good to fresh start there anyways. It's almost so far removed from everything else. You do have to have a slight knowledge. I think at the very beginning of the book, you do have like a little bit of a history thing at the very beginning explaining where we are at this point. And that's all you really need. Like, yeah. I haven't read anything since, like, I think I'm at 3059 is the last book I read. So I caught right in 100 years after I've been reading, and I understood what was going on, at least the grand scheme of everything. Yeah, and I mean, it was kind of hard. I mean, most of the Dark Age books are out of print, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And so, like, all the ones I had to get for research, like, I know Catalyst gave me some PDFs of some of them, but all the ones I wanted to read for research for this and just for everything in the era to try to get a handle on Dark Age, it's all just out of print, so it's hard to get a hold of. So that was part of my interest in trying to bring people in and set the scene in that way. Yeah, I definitely didn't feel lost in it. Like I said, it was an era I'd never read before, so I think you succeeded there for sure. I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah. And, so did you choose the Jade Falcons, or was that chosen for you? So that was chosen for me. I was, I'll tell you this story, like, it was, right after Mike Stackpole had gone to that story summit, he called me up and he's like, hey, we've got this book lined up for you, and you're going to be writing it, and it's going to come out pretty quickly, and the timelines got shifted around and stuff. But he's like, okay, all we know about what you need to do is we need to set up the Jade Falcons are stripping worlds and heading to heading into the big battle. I don't know how much.
Yeah, I wouldn't spoil the end. Yeah.
They're stripping worlds and heading to the big battle, and so that's what you've got to do, and you've got to work with the Jade Falcons. And I'd read some Jade Falcon stuff with Melvina and kind of how that worked, and so Stackpole and I just kind of spitballed the story out, and everything. Like, that was literally all the direction I had, was that it was Jade Falcons and they were stripping planets heading to Terra. I said that anyway.
And the best part is that you could have had it just where you would hate them, and because they are doing something pretty heinous, but you were able to find with a character that was, you liked them, and you liked everybody around him too. It wasn't just him. All the troops that he commanded too were good people too, which I liked a lot. It wasn't just one single person. I think it was a neat trick. Like, it was, somehow you made me like a Jade Falcon unit, so that was pretty good.
That was one of the things. Like, I'd read Blaine Pardoe's Splinter of Hope about Stephanie Chistu and her sort of struggle with Malvina Hazen, and how there were Falcons out there that just hadn't adopted that scorched earth, like, no holds barred, we're going to kill civilians no matter what, indiscriminately, if that's going to meet our goals, and we're going to make sure that anybody who opposes us is going to feel our wrath. And I mean, just from a logical standpoint, when I started trying to dive into the Jade Falcon psyche, it just doesn't make sense. It's not sustainable.
Yeah, right? It almost is insane. Like, the leaders are really insane, and then there's people underneath them going like, this is insane, but we have to follow orders.
Yeah, and so the only thing that clanners, which, I mean, clan society they're all psychopaths. But clan society, like, in order for them to survive, they have to have people under them going like, yeah, I know that those are the orders, but, like, if we burn this planet to the ground, we're not going to have anything from it.
It's not actually helping us in any way.
Yeah, so it's sort of like, and I think you find that in military situations like that, especially military sci-fi, that sort of thing happens, where they get their orders and they interpret them creatively in order to actually better fulfill the objectives that the people who are giving them the orders don't see. And I think in an age like the Dark Age, where the hyperpulse generators have gone dark, and communication's a lot harder, I think a lot more units are going to have to be creatively interpreting their orders, because the information is just not accessible about what the situation on the ground is. I kind of went back and started thinking about, like, what it would be like for King George to be orchestrating the Revolutionary War, where it's like a month voyage or longer to get that information across. And it's interesting that, like, the planet that it happens on, Saginas, has like almost a month long, like, turnover between the jump point and the actual planet. So it kind of fit in a lot of ways in my head about how information traveled in war like that, and how orders didn't always make sense.
And how they also, they saw that Archer was doing well, but maybe not doing what they wanted, so they actually sent somebody to keep an eye on him, and it's like, no, he's actually doing well. Like, you should have just let him do his job.
Yeah, no, he would have done fine. But I really think that Malthus kind of putting her nose in that is what caused all of the problems.
Oh yeah, 100%.
They would have gotten what they needed had they not tried to tighten their fist.
Yeah. But I think it seemed to me when you're writing it, they did it on purpose, though, to kind of provoke him, like trying to make him more like them, right?
Yeah, no, there's definitely there were some stories like that Splinter of Hope story that I read, is that Malvina had been trying to provoke Chistu into adhering to the Mongol doctrine, and Chistu was able to thread the needle very well, where it's like, I'll follow your orders to a point. And I think one of the things I like about Archer is that he gets to the point where it's just like, orders be damned, like this doesn't make sense.
Yeah, he's all about honor, which is great hence the name of the book.
Yeah. But how do you interpret completely ridiculous orders and still meet your mission objectives?
Especially in the clan where they're bred to just listen to their commanders. Like, that's their whole thing. Like, you're not supposed to ask questions.
Well, or you're just supposed to go to a trial, right?
Yeah.
It's just like,
that's right.
I don't want to fight for it. We're just going to go fight for it.
Yeah.
And how do you do that so far removed?
Yeah. And, I did like his second in command. The two ladies there they had like different parts of his conscience, and it was really fun to play off each other, and it was a great cast. I think he did really well that way.
Thank you. It was liberating on one end where I got to create my cast completely, like, and in fact, early drafts of the book didn't even have Malvina in it. And it was just 100% a cast I created, and that was just because I didn't want to get into continuity issues with anybody else or anywhere else, just in case it would make things a headache later for fact check. But when we got to the rewrites, we decided, like, I think Malvina needs a presence here, especially with what's coming up.
Yeah, tie it in a bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I think that was really well done. Anybody should be reading that book. Obviously, if you want to know what's going on with this new era, you're gonna have to start reading all these books. So I'm gonna have to catch up. I'm behind. This is like I said, the first one I've read in this era. So I'm excited to read more.
I was really excited. They gave me the book that is sort of, I think, the prologue to the Ill Clan era.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really the best way to look at Honor's Gauntlet. Is this is the beginning of the next era, even though it still says, even though it still has the Dark Age emblem on the book, this is the first step toward the Ill Clan era.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
And Pat, you could talk more of this about the Robotech book, but how, like you said, you got involved with that, but how was that going through, trying to, once again, interpreting all this information into...
Well, it sounds like you started way in the beginning of it, because you started with Attack on SDF-1, which ironically is the game that, when Palladium lost the license, is when we started seeing all this reemergence of Robotech, especially at Gen Con, when me and Rob, and Attack on SDF-1 was one of the first things we saw.
Yeah. I mean, really all I did with that was just sort of play testing and telling them, like giving them some pointers about, like, hey, Robotech flavor, like here's kind of how it works in the universe. Here's some things you might want to think about with some of the characters or whatever. It wasn't a whole lot, but I think it was enough for Jeff and the guys over at Strange Machine Games to say, like, oh, this guy knows his Robotech. And we'd met at Origins Game Fair and at Gen Con, and they were like, okay, I think we could work together, and it was a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, I didn't do a whole lot for Attack of the SDF-1 other than just look at how pretty it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good game. We played it a couple times, and the scenarios are very story-driven also. So then it sounds like your next step was into the role-playing game when they got that license, correct?
Yeah. So that was, they called me over to do that, and I don't know, maybe my background in Star Wars and stuff maybe lent some credibility to it, but getting into that, I really love Robotech. I tell you how much I love Robotech, and then I'll say, my middle child's middle name is Miria.
Nice.
So like that's, and they're 17 now, so like I've been into Robotech for a long time. Was
Robotech your first step into, I guess, the Mecha world?
It must have been. Like, Robotech is one of those things like Star Wars that feels like it's just always been imprinted in my brain. It might have been my first, like, Japanese cartoon in some ways too. I mean, I know that there's some debate about, like, whether or not Robotech counts as a Japanese cartoon because of the whole the Macross thing and how Harmony Gold redid stuff.
But it was definitely my introduction too for that whole idea of anime, for sure.
Yeah, and so that was probably one of my first steps. Like, I remember watching it like when I was like 6 or 7 on TV. and it was just always there. And then tracking down VHS tapes at Blockbusters in the 90s to try to rewatch it. And then the
memories.
Yeah, I know. Right? Well, I can't even believe, like, my kids have no concept of how hard it was to track stuff like that down. Like,
yeah.
I was showing them Ranma 1/2, and I was like, man, when I was your age, I had to go from Blockbuster to Blockbuster and wait for these to come out and rent them because there wasn't anywhere to buy them around here. It was it was insane.
Or you find that random mom and pop store that had a decent anime collection.
Yeah, exactly. And then I really fell in love with Robotech again in the early 2000s when the DVDs started coming out again. And that's around the time when my kid was born and I was kind of into it all over again. And so it's just always been floating around in my head, and I never thought I'd get to write in the universe. And it's funny, in my Star Wars work, my travels had brought me across Jim Lucino. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Jim Lucino, but he's written a whole bunch of Star Wars books, but he was one half of Jack McKinney.
Oh, really?
Who, alongside with Brian Daley, wrote all the Robotech books.
I never knew that was a pseudonym. That's hilarious.
Yeah, Jack McKinney was Brian Daley and Jim Lucino writing together. So when
really?
I started interviewing him for Star Wars stuff, I just wanted to talk about Robotech. And so we bonded over that. And when I got this gig, I tried to get him to come out of retirement and write another Robotech short story. And he told me, like, I've only got one story left to write in Robotech, and it's not going to fit in a short story.
Nice.
Because he'd done so much of it. But
all those books. As a kid, I read all of those books. They were great.
But he really helped me figure out how they wrote those books, and that's kind of how I tried to approach it. He was like, Harmony Gold just gave us videotapes of everything, and we just kind of filled in the blanks. And they were writing those books one a month.
Yeah,
as they were coming out,
wow.
Which is absurd to me.
That's ridiculous.
So I had a much smaller job than they did, although they probably got paid a lot more, and there was a lot. But I went back and revisited the books for the Robotech book because I think there's a lot of material in there that people don't necessarily notice. I don't know if you've been able to read all the scenarios and the back matter, like the character sort of the character stuff in the back on all the stories that are sort of first person from the characters in the universe. But I
haven't read them all yet, but yeah.
I tried to, you know how like at the beginning of chapters in the Robotech books, it would be like 3 lines of a transcript from an interview with so-and-so. And I tried to take those 3 lines in that interview and then blow it up to the whole interview. So that you get some of these perspectives and expand on what Jim and Brian Daley had done in those Robotech books, and really I found interesting ways that I think Robotech fans would dig. And then to be able to get to write like 2 short stories, one during the Battle of Toronto, which is I think one of my favorite things just in Robotech, is just the Battle of Toronto and the destruction of it. And another one in the later era with Rick, and just getting to put words in Rick's mouth was just really fun. Another one that I really loved doing was I did Roy Foker's journals before the Visitor landed, before the SDF-1 landed on Macross.
Oh, nice.
And just getting to do the journal entries of Roy Foker in his military days, in those last days of the military, and kind of what was going through his mind, and that push-pull between like the philosophy that Pop Hunter had tried to instill in him, and that nonviolence versus like, I'm trying to end the war sooner, versus, hey, this stuff is going to be really cool. And then, you know, some stuff with Claudia in there too. It was just, I love Roy Foker, and to get to put words like to ascribe words to him was some of the most fun, and one of the, like, I was just honored to be able to do it.
Yeah, it's cool to be able to play with your childhood toys like that.
Yeah,
definitely. So, and I think you did a really good job with some of the scenarios. I think I only read up to scenario 2 in the back, and I think it blends real nicely. And what I like about it the best, as far as role playing is concerned, is that you have the game mechanics and you have the scenarios, and the scenarios meld really well with the game mechanics as to getting the players to kind of really play into the story of Robotech itself, because it is such a in-depth world. Yeah. Again, just like Battletech, we were talking about, we're talking 1980s to 1970s worth of just stories and everything that goes back. So I really like that. It really makes you immerse yourself into the Robotech world the RPG does.
And I'm a game master, right? Like, I tried to approach all those stories about, like, if you notice in the scenarios, it'll be like the actual sort of facts and timeline of the scenario, but then the game designer's notes about, like, hey, here's ways you could play this with your players. And that was 100% me just trying to pull back and say, what's the coolest way I would do this if I were sitting at the table to do it? And so having to sit back and think about all that with Robotech was just so fun. And like you said, there's so much of it there. I tried to pull in so much, not just from the books and the cartoons, but even, like, there's tons of Jack Archer from the GameCube and PlayStation Robotech Battlecry video game. Mm-hmm. There's stuff from the comics. I went through it, like, I pulled no punches in trying to make some deep cuts for people as best I could with what there was in the Robotech canon, because there is a lot of it. And I really love it. So being able to pay honor to it and create a book that I hope is something that Robotech fans are going to want, even if they don't play role-playing games, because there's so much of that material in there that they would just love to reference.
Yeah, I mean, I think you did a very good job, so for what that's worth.
And introduce people to playing role-play games, too, hopefully, some of those people.
Yeah.
Actually, I wanted to ask a question real quick. So, back to when we started talking about Battletech and everything, you said you were a big Shadowrun fan?
Yeah. Again, like, my first love of Shadowrun came from the Super Nintendo game, which is a theme through my life, but played the role-playing game quite a bit in my teen years. I played just about every role-playing game I could get my hands on when I was a teenager, and Shadowrun was one of those. And when I was going to these conventions a lot, like, one of the things that was really interesting was just that Catalyst was there, and they had the Shadowrun license, and they had the Battletech license, and getting to know the guys there, it was just like really great happenstance that I'd liked Shadowrun enough to go up and start talking to them and build a relationship, and then Battletech came from that. And I've fallen in love with Battletech all over again.
And with the new Shadowrun game coming out, will you be able to is there going to be more fiction? You'll be able to get to play in that world too?
There's a ton of Shadowrun fiction coming out. Whether I'm going to get to play in that or not is anybody's guess. I've got some balls in the air with Battletech to do some more stuff, and hopefully that'll keep me busy. And I'm working on my own writing too. I've got some irons in that fire as well. But I would love to write some Shadowrun in the future. But there's definitely more Battletech on the horizon. Especially the more people let Catalyst know that they enjoyed Honor's Gauntlet, and maybe, review it on Amazon or whatever. I know they're tracking all that stuff, so the more people express enjoyment of what I've done, maybe the bigger slice of that pie I'll be able to chew off of.
Well, there you go, guys. If you listen to this and you read the book, please leave a positive review.
Yeah, go onto Amazon.
So we get more books.
Yeah, no, and they've got, I gotta tell you, like, be really excited for the stuff coming up with, just the stuff coming up in the Ill Clan era. They've got some really cool surprises in store, and I can't wait for people to dive in. And I'm really honored I got to play a small part in helping kick that off.
And we definitely hope to see more of Archer Pride, because he's a great character, and it looks like he's gonna have some stuff to do pretty soon, so.
Yeah, no, he's definitely going to be busy, I hope.
Yeah, that's cool. With the Robotech, any word if they're going to continue on the series? Because that first book is just the Macross saga, right?
Yeah, it is. I've heard that they're working on the rules for future installments. Whether I'm working on it or not is sort of anybody's guess, and whether the license... I know there's been some stuff with the license that I'm not really privy to that's been going on, and I'm not sure if that's altered anything, but last I talked to those guys, they were working on putting out a whole bunch of stuff. So
yes, so if we get some more of the eras for that too, and then jump in there with your sections.
I'd like to see some cyclones.
Yeah, definitely.
No, I know that there's plans in the works for stuff, but I'm not sure how close they are to fruition or anything.
That's good. That's good to hear, though.
Yeah.
And so anything else you've been working on for you're saying you're writing your own books? What kind of fiction do you write for yourself?
I'm working in some sci-fi horror stuff that I've got an agent, and he's out kind of shopping it around, and hopefully it goes some places. I really like the idea of sci-fi horror, so and it seems you've got Alien, and that's about it. And I think there's so many different ways to take that on, and I've got some ideas and written some books, and that should be interesting. As far as my last published novel was a book called The Aeronaut, and it was sort of a steampunk World War I book.
Oh, nice. That's very interesting too. I love steampunk.
Yeah, no, and that was another one where it was like I had to go back, and as I was researching World War I was like, wait a second, World War I was already pretty steampunk. I've got to
it was.
turn this up to 11.
More dirigibles, that's all you need.
Yeah, no, there's and jetpacks. That was
there you go.
The Aeronaut is a guy in the French Aeronautic Corps, and they've got jetpacks, and their whole thing is they jump over the enemy lines.
Nice.
And it's imagine if not to compare myself to these two, but like if Ernest Hemingway or Graham Greene were like, I want to write a story, and I want nerds today to read it, how would I approach that? And so it's sort of a blend of like how I imagine Hemingway would try to approach steampunk while he was working on A Farewell to Arms or something.
Nice. That's awesome. Gotta check that out.
Maybe that's pretentious of me. I don't know. But it was fun. It was really fun to work on. A lot of my stuff is in the nerd space too. The first book I put out was, and it's still available. It's called Lost at the Con, and imagine, Fear and Loathing at Dragon Con. It's really, it's about a drunken political journalist in the Hunter S. Thompson sort of vein who gets assigned against his will to cover a sci-fi convention.
Especially Dragon Con. That's one of the more dangerous ones. So
that could be overwhelming.
I love Dragon Con. I go to a lot of conventions every year. Well, except for this year.
Yeah.
And Dragon Con might be my favorite. I mean, they're all my favorite in my heart, but Dragon Con, there's just something special about it. It's so bizarre.
Yeah, that's right. It's unique. It's not like all the other cons, that's for sure.
No, it's not at all. Like the others, you'll get a hotel, you'll go to the conference center, and Dragon Con is just like it's in your hotel.
It's everywhere. Yeah,
the entire time. Yeah.
Dragon Con is huge. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, unfortunately, no Gen Con this year. We always go to Gen Con, so maybe next year we'll be able to hook up with you and talk in person.
I'll be there. I've been a guest the last couple of years for the Writer Symposium, and
nice.
So that was my big push over into Gen Con, and this year I'll be signing some books at the Catalyst booth because we'll have copies of Honor's Gauntlet and stuff, and hopefully by next Gen Con I've got another book out. Who knows?
Yeah. We actually have a good relationship with Catalyst. Some of our friends are good friends with. I forget his name. He does a lot of Sharon work, game development.
Mm-hmm.
But we always, because he lives over here in Chicago where I live, so when our friend Brian comes into town, we always kind of get together with him and play some Shadowrun games.
Yeah, they've got some good stuff going on there, and I'm really digging what they're doing with the universes with both of them, and the Shadowrun RPG is just gorgeous.
Yeah,
the new book, and yeah, it's just I'm really glad that they're keeping with the fiction too, especially with Battletech. And I think one of the things you're going to see with Battletech now is it's kind of going to revert to the way it used to be, where the fiction would all come out, and then all of the source material and the scenarios and stuff would come out of the fiction.
Yeah, that's cool.
And for a long time, it kind of got turned around, so it was like the fiction was trying to catch up to all the game material.
I would love it to go back to the old ways like that.
I think that's what the plan is.
Nice. Yeah, that works so much better, because then you get the background for it all, so it's not just stale stuff in a rule book. You get what happened in an actual story instead of just reading about it.
Yeah. I mean, Shattered Fortress is a really great resource book to kind of catch you up to the wall falling, the Fortress Republic stuff. But I would have much rather read all that stuff than just I would like reading it in stories rather than the source book. And I think that's sort of the direction that they're taking, which is why there's not any like stuff about the Ill Clan, right? Like where that's headed.
Oh yeah.
Like you're gonna have to read that in the fiction first.
Yeah, and then the Ill Clan source book's gonna come out eventually. That's great.
Yeah, based on all the fiction.
Yeah, because it's different between you reading a history book and reading a fiction about the history. It's much you get more into it when you're reading the fiction for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, excited about that. Yeah, it's a good time, especially with the Kickstarter soon to be delivering for the Battletech. That's gonna push a lot more people, I think, into playing some more, and then they'll be feeding into the fiction and all the source books after that for sure.
Well, and I hope the people who have contributed to the Kickstarter are really keeping an eye out on the fiction, because there really is a really big push to include the characters that came in through the Kickstarter in the book.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this, like Archer Pride was one of those Kickstarter characters.
Oh, was it? It was somebody's name?
It was so I guess with the Kickstarter they'd sent in sort of like dossiers about characters they wanted to see.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a change I had to make like 3/4 of the way through, because they were like, hey, we've got this character who has a different name than the character you have as the lead in your book. But the personalities match, and we can't have too many Jade Falcons like this running around. So would you be okay changing the name? And I was fine with that. I mean, I kind of like, there was some stuff in the book that I think would make more sense with the old name. But I had no problems.
That's cool.
Changing it. And so that was a Kickstarter. Somebody got to name him and put him out. And I haven't heard from this person. So if you put in Archer Pride into the Kickstarter, I don't think I can guarantee that they're not all going to get the starring treatment in a book.
No, yeah.
You know, a lot of them are going to be just side characters, throwaway names or whatever.
Well, it was like 3,000 characters or something that people have to find ways into books, so it's going to be a bunch.
And it was one of those two where it was just like, hey, we came across this and it's literally the character you've already written. Can you just...
That's cool.
Can you just put it in?
So it was nice serendipitous. It wasn't, you weren't forced to do it. It happened to work out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations, Kickstarter member who named Archer Pride.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'd love to hear from you, because now, I keep hearing from so many people, they want to see more Archer Pride, and that name was 100% not my fault.
It's not the name, it's the character anyways. It could have been any name, but that character is really great. Like I said, I would never have liked any Jade Falcon before now, but he made me like a Jade Falcon.
Do you want to know what his name was before and why it would have made more sense?
Sure.
He was a Bailey, and his name was Diego. And Diego with the mech named Tornado.
And he does like to speaking Spanish a lot in the book too. So
yeah, so in my head, Archer Pride, in every iteration, regardless of what his name was basically just sort of Guy Williams Zorro.
Yeah, you kind of described him that way with a thin mustache and
yeah, exactly. And so having it Diego and Tornado, and then the Spanish, it all seemed to coalesce a little better. But Archer Pride, there's a really long history of the Prides in the story, in Battletech in general, and I think people really loved. And
they do have a theme of being kind of rebellious too, the Pride. So it kind of fits.
It worked in so many ways just in the fiction that I was really happy to change it. I mean, So don't be surprised if Diego Bailey works his way into another story somewhere else, and I don't know what his deal is now anymore. But
also with Battletech, ethnicity is like, the names don't really mean anything towards ethnicity. You get tons of like Japanese characters who are African American, or African, so it's neat how that happens, where it really doesn't matter what they're called. It's all about how they act. And yeah, I like how the superiors were kind of annoyed that he liked to use Spanish once in a while.
Yeah, no, it's again one of those things where like I wanted to do that, not just because I wanted to kind of stretch the bounds of Battletech, where so many of the books I write, like, really just, it didn't have a whole lot of diversity. And being able to put a character that gave it at least a little bit of that flavor was something that was really interesting to me. And so it made sense. They were like, why does he do that? And I'm like, well, he's this iconoclast. He's really interested in the people that you've conquered in a way that Jade Falcons usually aren't. And they're like, okay, that's fine. Like,
and he's also much more intelligent than the average person. Like, he really thinks about things. He doesn't just follow blindly. He analyzes everything, and like I say, he likes to learn. Like you really bring that across right at the beginning in the book, that that's his character, that he does that because he likes to learn things about the people he's conquering.
Yeah, and I hope that he gets a chance to conquer more people. Well, maybe not even. I don't know. Who knows what?
Well, hopefully he gets a chance to. I think we got to vote for Archer Pride to be Ilkon now. That's all that matters.
I think there's probably some Jade Falcons who are
a little higher up,
line in front of him, a little higher up. But but hopefully he figures into the plans in the Jade Falcons, whatever their next iteration is.
Yeah, for sure.
Or whatever their next step is, I guess.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I guess I have to ask, Brian.
Yes.
Totally kind of off subject here. Book notwithstanding, are you pro-clan or anti-clan?
In what way? Like, as a fiction reader, I'm so pro-clan. I find their stories fascinating. But I'm kind of, I mean, like, I guess it depends. Like, I'm kind of.
I guess where I'm coming from. I guess from a game standpoint.
I mean, they've got the best mechs.
That's what annoys Pat, is that he thinks they're overpowered.
That was definitely a challenge as I was writing the battles in the books, where they're like, "Hey, I get it, the clan mechs are better, but have them put up more of a fight."
Yeah, you just made them numbers. You made them fight much larger numbers.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I mean they have better mechs, but I think smarter commanders can move around that easily enough, and we'll see how that all plays out. But I wasn't really attached to the game before the clans showed up, but I would be happy to pass along your annoyance to Mike Stackpole.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it just a general annoyance. Just a general annoyance, I guess we could call it. It's not. It doesn't take away from anything that my enjoyment, because I did enjoy the clan stories, like you said.
Yeah, it's not the fiction that you're offense. It's the gameplay, because he was around when it switched from before, like when he was there when the clan invasion happened. So he got beat up by the clans a lot. So I think he's harboring this deep down resentment.
There's a little PTSD going on, I think.
Yeah, no, and it's funny. I see that with BattleTech fans a lot. I mean, I do a lot of conventions with Mike, and I can't tell you, just as many people show up to complain about like core meltdowns as they do Star Wars stuff, or that he's not doing Star Wars. Like, he gets as much BattleTech flack as he does. Like, why aren't you writing Star Wars still?
No, that's too bad. I mean, I do enjoy Mike's Star Wars books too. So
me too. I would love to see him get back into that universe the way Tim Zahn has been. I just finished his new Thrawn book, and it's just I'm kissing my fingers. You can't see that on the podcast. Yeah, it's great. But
on another side note, to kind of introduce you a little more to our audience. So it sounds like you're a pretty avid role player game right now.
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic has kind of put a hamper in that, but yeah, no, I really love role playing games, and I've been playing for as long as let me see. Like, I started playing when I was like 7 or 8 when I got, like, it was Star Wars that did it, right? Like, I walked into a store.
The West End game, Star Wars?
Yeah, like, I walked into a game store. It's the first time I ever walked into a game store, and those books were in the window. And I was just like, I can't leave without those. Like, I was like 7 years old making demands of my parents, and it must have been the most obnoxious thing. And they're like, we can't get those now. And I'm like, fine, but you have to track those down. And then that was my big Christmas present that year. And, like, I've been into RPGs ever since and just really love them. I'm playing a lot of D&D 5e with my son and his friends.
Oh, that's cool.
Which is interesting. Playing with a group of 18-year-old kids. Well, we've been playing since they were like... Well, I've been playing with... my son's name is Anakin. I've been playing with Anakin since he was like 8, and with a group of my peers, and then him. And it was always really interesting because he would come up with the most like left field solutions to everything that roll so well that he would always get to do it. And then now as he's gotten older and his friends, like I DM for them, and I've had some of the best games of my life playing with him and his friends. But
sure,
yeah, I just really love it. It's just a great storytelling thing. I've taught classes about how great gaming is, especially game mastering and dungeon mastering, is for just learning how to construct a story, right? Like, you have 100%. To do it on the fly, and then you have to be thrown characters that you're not quite sure if you know what they're going to do. And I love building the idea for a story and then throwing it at characters and then having them throw curveballs at me in ways I couldn't expect. And I think it's made my writing better in that it allows me to think a little bit more creatively about how characters can act in unexpected ways.
Yeah, you've seen it in your gameplay where you're like, well, I would have the character do this, but my players have done crazy things to me. Maybe I could try change it up a bit.
Yeah, and then throw a kid in there. Like, who knows what you're going to get. There's so many stories I had that were just torpedoed by him trying something absolutely ridiculous. Or stories that never even started. Like, his thing was when he started playing when he was like... his first RPG we made sure was Star Wars, and I played it so that I had one of my friends play a Jedi Master, and he was playing my son was playing a Padawan to this Jedi Master, and they were on the run in Order 66. So the relationship on the table was very much master and apprentice as far as the game mechanics were concerned, but also in the game. Yeah, and it worked really well, and he was super into it. And then his style of play could only be described as Drunken Dwarf. And so, like... he started playing drunken dwarves. Like, as we moved into D&D and stuff, he would just pick fights in taverns, right? Like, people would go into a tavern to talk to a contact, and he'd start a fight, and we'd spend the whole evening resolving that fight rather than doing any of the story stuff just because he wanted to go bash his head against a waiter or something.
The chaos element.
Oh yeah, he's a much better player now. And he's a much more fun and creative player now, but trying to compete.
That's how you learn,
the imagination of a 10-year-old is, or 13, or the gamut of ages until he finally settled into being able to play a character consistently was really fascinating.
I'm sure we're all like that when we were young too, starting out in RPGs. I can imagine a few games early on where we're just terrible. So
it's
always fun though.
So many of those games I played, I tried writing so many stories about them. Like one of the biggest, most like amazing games I ever played. I swear, I don't think I'll ever role play anything better than this. I was probably 15. And we were playing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Palladium system.
Yeah.
And we were like, we just got the new Transdimensional book. I don't think it was new. I think it had been out for years, but it was new to us.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're like, okay, let's kill Hitler. And so we spent an entire summer with a busted time watch trying to get to 1940s Germany to go kill Hitler. And it was just the most amazing thing. Like, as 15-year-olds, it pushed us to learn a lot about, like, history because we wanted to create verisimilitude and figure out how all this stuff worked. And And it was just great. It taught me so much about storytelling, and it taught me so much about like history and finding those stories in history. It served me well in all of my writing ever since.
Nice. Cool. Well, I think we covered most stuff, I think, about you. It sounds great, and we can't wait for the next Battletech book. We know that's coming out, but also your other fiction. And I'm going to check out Aeronauts for sure. That sounds really fun.
Yeah. No, the publisher went under, so it might not be available, but I think I'm going to put it out myself because the publisher went under. But if you have a problem getting a hold of it, let me know, and I'll make sure you get a copy.
Yeah, that's
I've got boxes of copies.
And so online, where can people find you? You're on Twitter. That's where we hooked up.
Yeah, if you want to find me on Twitter, it's at Swankmotron, SwankMotron, and that's my website too. Is Swankmotron, and I write about Star Wars mainly at sci-fi/film, StarWars.com, Star Wars Insider, and you can find Honors Gauntlet. Battletech Honors Gauntlet wherever books are sold. I would put in a bid. I know you can get it on Amazon. That'd probably be faster, and I know you want to read it quickly. But during this pandemic, your local indie bookshop probably needs the help.
Yeah.
So consider snagging it. I don't think that the cost increase is negligible. It's already a pretty cheap date as far as a book goes. Consider snagging it from your local indie bookshop seller.
Cool. Well,
any personal projects you want to give a shout out to?
If you have enjoyed listening to me wax philosophical about Robotech and Battletech, I do host a Star Wars podcast weekly called Full of Sith, and it's a lot of fun. The last episode we did was an interview with Alex Segura, who wrote the new Poe Dameron Freefall book. So, yeah,
nice.
fullofsith.com.
Nice.
I see a picture here with you and Carrie Fisher on a couch.
Yeah, I got to interview her at a convention just before the year before Force Awakens came out. That was the most intense and stressful situation of my life.
Especially
immediately off the rails.
Wow,
it was
cool
like
that there's a great picture of you two on this couch.
Yeah, I think the video's online too. Like you could watch the whole thing, but it was just. It was nerve-wracking in a number of senses. The first sense was that it was off and on repeatedly, right? Where it was like, she wanted to do it, but Lucasfilm was like, no, and then, is she doing it? Is she not doing it? And so the day before the convention started, they were like, she's not doing a panel. It's like, okay. Then, like, the Saturday morning of the convention, they're like, she is doing a panel, we need you to host it. And I was like,
really?
I prepared for this, but like you told me 2 days ago that it wasn't happening. They're like, well, it is now. So I go back. Backstage. We're getting ready. She's kind of late. She finally shows up, and she's got Gary Fisher, her dog, with her. And I go up to introduce her, and this is Princess Leia. And I go, hey, my name's Bryan Young. I'm going to be interviewing you. I'm going to be asking the questions. She's like, that's all fine. And then she turns around. She goes, 1 second. She looks down at Gary and she goes, Gary, you're going to stay here. We're going up there, but you're staying here. And then she turns back to me and she goes, do you have a Diet Coke? Does anybody have a Diet Coke around here? And I'm just like, I'm the moderator. I don't have a Diet Coke. And I look around and go, hey, can we get Miss Fisher here a Diet Coke? And people start running around scrambling to find her Diet Coke. But the time for the panel happens, and we have to go up, and she still doesn't have a Diet Coke. So we get up on stage, and just as we introduce her, they hand us the mics, they put the couch out there, and just as I'm about to take a breath to start, she gets onto her mic first and goes, does anybody here in the audience have a Diet Coke? And some guy raises up a sealed can of Diet Coke, and she's like, get up here. And she leans down, takes the Coke, and then open mouth kisses this guy. And I'm like, okay, I've clearly lost control here. Like, there's
it's not even started, and you already lost control.
Yeah. And like every time I asked her a question, I was super fast. I can't find any interviews where she talked about the work she did rewriting the prequels or doing polish work on the prequels. And I was trying to ask her about that, about other writing that she'd done with George Lucas, and she just turns it hard right into taking Indiana Jones's virginity. So which is a real thing. She wrote episodes of the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, and she was referring to the episode with Mata Hari where she actually wrote Indy losing his virginity, and it was just like, I was kind of prepared for this, but not really. Like, she was just a force of nature. And we were on stage for something like 17 minutes, and it was 17 of the most chaotic, wonderful minutes of my life.
Yeah, it's something you'll never forget, at very least.
No, it's not.
That's awesome. Cool. So you can check out is that on the podcast page, or is that...
It's on its personal page, actually, is where I found it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you look up my name and Carrie Fisher, you'll find the video of all of that. And,
nice.
And yeah, I haven't been able to go back and rewatch it because I'm convinced I totally screwed it up. But I'm told it's enjoyable.
Your memories will be better for it, anyways.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, I can't even begin to describe what it's like to be sitting on a couch and having Princess Leia's attention. You know, that the close-ups of her in Empire where she's like longingly staring into Han Solo, that's just what she looks like. And when it's aimed at you, you kind of turn a little bit to jelly.
Yeah. That's awesome.
No doubt.
Yeah. But,
well, thank you, Bryan, for being on the show. It's been really enjoyable. We thought it just be a short one, but we talked for a while. It was great.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. And next time I've got something out, I'd be more than happy to come back. So.
Yeah, for sure.
You're welcome anytime you want to come on, Bryan.
Yeah, next book for sure. We got to hear for it.
It's been a real pleasure.
Okay, thank you guys.
Well, thank you.
Check out In Your Honor, right?
Honor's Gauntlet.
Honor's Gauntlet. I'm sorry. And play some Robotech scenarios.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. Well, this has been Mobile Armor Radio, and we'll be back for our regular episode at the beginning of next month. Thank you for listening. I've been Rob.
I've been Chopper.
Thanks for having me. Goodbye, everybody.
This has been Mobile Armor Radio. Join our Facebook group by searching for Mobile Armor Radio. Find us on Twitter at @MArmorRadio. Find us on iTunes and visit our website, mobilearmorradio.podbean.com. Join us on the first of every month for more Mecha discussion.